right, everybody. Welcome to Phonogenics 101. We are here to talk about Prince's album, Sign of the Times. We have a great panel of my friends here today to talk about Prince. Let's go around the circle and everyone can introduce themselves. First of all, we have Jill Jones, who was around when all of this happened. So, Jill, thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. We have Jeffrey Dicker, who did the liner notes for The Ultimate Prince.
Hello, everyone.
We have Joshua Bean from St. Petersburg, Florida.
Hello, hello.
Melissa Riley from, is it Dayton, Ohio?
It's Akron.
Akron, Ohio.
Yeah.
And then Ann Fearman from Western New York. My high school, but double trouble, me and Ann Fearman. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'll talk about each song, then we'll go around the circle and everyone can kind of say how they feel. So here it is, Prince, Sign of the Times. It was 1987. I remember going to the record store and being like, what the hell is this shit? I came into Prince during Parade era. My mom had the Purple Rain vinyl, but Parade was the first one I bought for myself. It was 1986 when they came out, so that would have put me at 11 years old. So Sign of the Times was the first album where I really became a Prince fan. And of course, the single came out before the album. So I went to the record store and I saw this.
Yeah.
And I said, what the hell is going on here? This is different. The lead single, of course, was the title track. And does anyone want to give a little history about leading up to the album, all the different incarnations?
Oh, gosh.
First, it was The Dream Factory, which was supposed to be a Revolution album, right?
Right.
And then it was going to be Crystal Ball, which was a 3-disc album without the Revolution. And then it became Sign of the Times, a double album. And I'm going to say something controversial. I feel like Sign of the Times is the best incarnation of all of them. I'm not sure how everyone else feels hearing all
I think pretty much all three versions would have been just as good. I mean, it's fun to think of like what the world could have been if, like, you know, Rebirth of the Flesh was a single or something, but
right. I felt like of all of them, Dream Factory was the weakest. Like, I feel like getting rid of the Revolution was not a bad thing, which I might get crucified for saying that, but I feel like they did what they did. Parade was awesome, and then, you know, it was time for something. It was clearly time for something different, in my opinion. All right. Does anyone else
I've got something to say. Oh,
okay.
Sorry.
Oh, go on.
No, Jill Jones should speak before me. Absolutely.
No, I agree.
Because I don't
with
have
you.
anything of real value to add. I just was going to
Yes,
say
you
something.
do. I think I agree with you, Jeremy. I think that because of the way he was, he had to keep moving on, and I also think that he just maybe wanted just some funky bits again, and just some, you know, just that, you know, he could only do so much of the airy-fairy, ethereal kind of, you know, I don't know. It was just, he wanted, because he started to really like use those guitars and really get back into writing actually on a guitar more so than on the keyboards, because everybody knows either one, those create two different things. It depends on the instrument you start writing on, really changes. I think he just started really loving guitar again.
And no disrespect here at all. I love Wendy and Lisa's albums, but, you know, I feel like they really want to feel like they really added so much to the Prince universe. And I feel like just because you add some finger cymbals and a sitar onto a song doesn't mean like the world's going to change, you know?
Yeah, I know.
So no disrespect, but I feel like hearing some of the versions with Wendy and Lisa, then hearing what Prince did when he went back to solo, I really feel like he was where he needed to be at the time.
But I actually think that David brought in all of that. Lisa's brother, David Coleman, brought in the whole, because he really was like the embodiment of somebody kind of trying that way and study it and curious about the instrumentation. So I actually think that David is kind of more the unsung one on this one, because with those elements on that part, on that whole composition, and anything kind of new, would intrigue Prince's ear.
Right.
And he would build around it. So I think that, but he wasn't going to go down the Ravi Shankar route. That was very George Harrison of him. It was his George Harrison moment, I say.
Anne, did you have something to say before we go into the first track?
I was just going to say that, first of all, I'm a kill your idols kind of person, and so I have very little knowledge about anything that I'm not deeply interested in, which is mostly myself or death. So I just sort of listened to it and I liked it, right? And it was really seminal for me when I was like 11, 12 and wanted to be Wendy. So I'm just, on behalf of Wendy and Lisa, I'm just going to say that they were amazing back then. They were like everything I wanted to be. But at the same time, I think that Prince was really always changing out his band. The one I felt like he stayed with too long, this is just sort of on my thing, was that one where he did that, the whole lace and that whole thing. Remember? What's that lace song?
Diamonds and Pearls?
Yes! Yes! I was close. I knew. I mean, it was in the same. Yes! Yes!
Diamonds
that
and
one.
Lace.
There was like, he was at the same band for like 3 albums straight or something. I just remember it being like, oh, get a different band. So I was really happy when, he broke out and kept bringing back different iterations of Prince.
So,
that's all I'm going to say.
Jeff, I'll just say one thing. I'll keep it short and sweet, but like what Jill was saying about getting away from kind of like the airy fairy, I like that. The thing I love about this album is the fucking horns, man. I mean, it's just the horns, the jazzy, funky, dirty, like, shout out to, Eric Leeds and Atlanta Bliss. Like, it's just, that's what my ear, I'm just a sucker for horns. It was just, amazing.
Do you all remember listening to the album the first time? Because I remember hearing it for the first time and being like, I was like, holy shit. First of all, who is Camille? First of all.
Oh.
And that was at a time for me when I wouldn't necessarily listen to every single song. I would kind of just hear the single, or if a song started off boring, I would move on to the next thing. This was like, you put it on, and every song was like, I can't move. I have to just sit here and like, I remember reading the lyrics and just laying on my bed and trying to imagine what the instruments were that he was playing, or what. To this day, I still have no idea what some of those sounds, how they were made.
And listening back, to some of it's pretty lo-fi, I feel like. Like, some of these songs have really spare productions, which I guess we'll get into when we go track by track. But I just remember hearing for the first time, like, this is really different. And even, how many years later are we now? I don't want to go there. Think of how many years have passed since 1987. But to this day, like, what even sounds like this album? Nothing.
Nothing. There's something for everybody on this album. There's something for everyone.
I think it's hard, too, because in today's environment, nobody does complete albums. So it's really tricky to get a gauge on, what the artist, who they are, what they're trying to embody. That's the strange thing. Everybody's so singles oriented and trend oriented that it's a little bit like going to a snack machine, a vending kind of thing. But yeah, as far as albums go, I love that era where people got to really make an album.
Right.
I just love that.
And all of you really made albums. Like, your album, every album that came out during that whole era is a complete body of work.
True.
So, any other thoughts on the general album before we get into the first song? All right. So, the hits from the other albums, you had Purple Rain, then you had Raspberry Beret from Around the World Today, you had Kiss from Parade, and then comes the lead single from this album, Sign of the Times. I remember the first time I heard it, it was so somber. It didn't have the huge hook that other songs had, and it was very topical. And it's so relevant today as it was in 1987. So does anyone else have any memories of the first time they heard the title track?
What was the first song? What was it?
Sign of the Times, the title track.
That was their single, yeah.
So it's the first song, it's the opening track and the first single.
I mean, that was so great only because it really dealt with society's issues. And so it was still kind of a 70s kind of, not vibe, but with the same form of like, okay, now I'm going to address the community. And AIDS really was like all those little clever ways that he put the lyrics and did all of that. And used really, I really thought he focused a lot on some really clever way of structuring his lyrics.
Yeah.
His word use on this record was pretty phenomenal. He was really, it's like he figured out how to do more metaphors and more of all of that. I kind of really like that, and trying to grow his songwriting.
You know, as far as social commentary goes, you know, you hear the song now mentioned with like, you know, Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On," Stevie Wonder's "Living for the City." Like, it's in that same realm of just a song of kind of captures a generation that's still, like you said, Jeremy, is just so relevant today.
Any other thoughts on "Sign of the Times"?
I have
The
a
song.
thought.
Okay.
It was so different because I was hooked with, you know, Purple Rain, obviously, because that was just everything, right? And that was middle school, and that was, you know, burgeoning sexuality, and then I was like, I need to be Wendy when I grow up. So it was, that was really important. But then to transition to, like, I had like the fucking purple 45s and shit until my sister destroyed them. But that's, you know, that's a whole book, I guess. So, but this was like such a, it started off so somber, right? You know, generally your first song is something like, I don't know, upbeat, you know, it sort of sets that stage. And
Let's go crazy.
Voice, right. And his voice was so, there wasn't a lot happening. It was just like he was speaking it, which I think that, you know, what Josh said about, you know, relating it to like 60s and 70s anthemic music, it felt powerful. And I felt really fucking smart that I understood what he was talking about, right? Because AIDS was like everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. That was such a frightening time that's all I remember from that time period of, like, you know, learning about sex, was that sex equals AIDS. That's it. That, you know, there is no alternative. And so to see somebody that was so aware of what was happening, but then super sexual too, was like, oh my God, we can do both. We can have both. It was phenomenal.
It's interesting to think that, you know, only 3 years ago, or 3 years before the song came out, you know, he was doing Purple Rain, and now all of a sudden he's like barely about to turn 30, and it's so mature, even though Purple Rain was mature, but it's just, it's like, it's almost as if he was like 10 years older than he actually was. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. And
let's talk about the packaging of the album. Like, of all of Prince's looks, I love that kind of like the hippie John Lennon glasses kind of aesthetic that he went for, and even the colors of like the lyric sheets. It was like that peach and black. It was a really different aesthetic than everything he'd released. I don't think there was any purple anywhere. I didn't
think of that.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of transitioning off of his Beatles submersion. You know, Dr. Pepper, or not Dr. Pepper, Sgt. Pepper.
we know what you meant.
They're both delicious.
But I do recall, like, I was just looking this up because ages before that, like, the one song, like, I always remembered, you know, going and dancing like at Carlos and Charlie's and stuff, and it was like White Lines had come out with Grandmaster Flash and stuff. So he would always, there were some songs he wouldn't dance to, but he would dance to that one. So you could kind of get an idea, you know, Irresistible Bitch kind of came a little bit off of the edge of those things with the real breakdown sparseness. And I think he also could see what was going on around musically. There was a real breakdown moment. And there were bands who, I think the bands around that time that were getting like notoriety or were people standing up and speaking about things. You had like U2, I think, were on the scene. And you had, so I think this was his moment to position himself in that, on that echelon, so to speak. And then yet it had that street thing still going with addressing the social commentary.
And we should also mention there's that little line about the Challenger explosion, which was so fresh at the time.
Yeah.
Well, a rocket ship explodes and everybody still wants to fly. Isn't that such a metaphor for the crazy shit we're in right now?
That was a crazy day for me because I actually had gone home for my grandmother's funeral. And the day she was buried was the day the Challenger, all of that happened. And I remember he and I spoke to each other because I was deciding when I was coming back. And I was just like, well, it's been a heck of a, like this day is like, what are you saying? It was the old days with an actual phone. You know, at your grandparents' house with the long cord.
Oh, yeah. All right, so Sign of the Times, I loved on the album how it extended longer than the single version. We have like a little bit of the guitar solo. And then it goes into Play in the Sunshine, which is wild. The first time I heard it, I'm like, okay, things are picking up here. And I remember there was some awful beauty pageant where they did a version of Play in the Sunshine. It was like all these these white beauty pageant people. It was like that year. And I just looked it up on YouTube recently, so when you guys get off of here, look it up. It's awful. I do not think that's how Prince intended for Playing the Sunshine.
I feel like that's your responsibility to add that to this video. Yes. All right? Like a supercut, you know?
I could do that, I guess.
I remember hearing this song, and I didn't really like it at first, and then it just kind of grew on me.
Same.
Yeah.
I love this right off the bat. I didn't know what ecstasy was at the time, though. But and I always thought the lyric "margarita or ecstasy" was kind of like, I thought he was like, using it wrong, and then I realized that he was talking about the drug.
Was this one of his first songs where he really had that like band sound where everyone was like calling out and stuff? Because I can't think of any earlier songs where, because he went in that direction a lot from this point forward. Like you heard that a lot in his music, but did you hear it before this that much?
Can't think of one.
I'm wondering if he felt more
Baby, I'm a Star had it a little.
Yeah, Baby, I'm a Star.
Yeah. But also, like, I think his other ones, he was, you know, and I don't know him personally or whatever, even though in my head I do. But it felt like he was pretty anal retentive about, like, every little part of the music, of the production and everything. And so maybe he started to adapt to the idea of that more live feel where you include, you know, what's happening in the studio. And it's, you know, that's just my idea.
I definitely hear a freedom that, you know, maybe he felt letting go of the revolution, and you can hear a freedom in this song and a looseness that was kind of new. I feel like, you know, you did hear it in Baby I'm a Star, but even that felt a little bit more contained in this song. Playing the Sunshine is kind of wild.
That's true. It is. I never really cared for the song.
Really?
I like the lyrics, but it was not going to be something that I would listen to. But I think that as they keep releasing things from the vault, maybe we're starting to see his kind of affinity for those kind of like bops. He did like a bop. And so now it's kind of like weird when they release these bops. I think he liked a bop. Yep. He's got a ton of them in the vault. I don't know how well they'll do again, but he does like that bop. And he was able to get Kat and everybody, you know, their energy. And I mean, maybe she was dancing around in rehearsal or something, and he came up with it. I don't know, but it's possible. You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting that he never, after the Sign of the Times tour, he like put the song to bed and never played it again ever.
Yeah, because can you imagine every night singing that thing? No offense. I would just be like, I mean, it's fun. It's very, I don't know. It just wasn't really something. Yeah. But I'm not that person. I'm not that person. I'm more dark. So
I feel like it was functional in the album, that it took it from the seriousness of the first song and then kind of like pick things up. There was almost more of like a functional song than, you know, drummer, do your thing.
Yeah, and it's like there's always this like marching band feeling for me with those kind of songs. It's always like, here we go, follow the leader, da 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 da, and here's my Playing in the Sunshine, and everybody's going marching, you know. So for me, you know, the girl who wore socks on her drill team on her hands because I forgot my gloves, I just really am traumatized by those kind of songs.
Yeah, I was in the marching band, and I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I get it. It just makes me feel like it's it's a cartoon. It's something that we grew up with. Something where you see everybody going da 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 da. And he likes stuff like that. I mean, he watched a lot of TV in his early days.
There's definitely a xylophone in there.
I think it's just pulling. It's almost like, like when you introduce your band on stage, right? And you're like, it felt like that. It felt like, he starts off with a song, then he's like, and here's my band. In the second song.
Exactly.
Well, I guess we can all agree that Playing the Sunshine's not going to be in our top 10 favorites of all time. But I remember sitting there in my little Fisher-Price record player.
Oh, God.
And then all of a sudden I hear, "Shut up already, damn." And I was like, what? Who is Camille? What is this crazy song? What the hell is going on here? And all these years later, I'm still like, what the hell is going on? Housequake is amazing. We all love Housequake, don't we?
So good.
It just grabs you right away.
I feel like this felt much more black to me also than, Parade or Around the World in a Day. I felt like Prince was really tapping into something here, at least from my point of view.
He was tapping into a lot of colloquialisms and those kind of things that were, for sure, in the community. And what he said a lot behind the scenes. A lot of times I always felt that the voices were a really great way for a boss if you're not 100% comfortable with telling people how to sing in a studio or how to do certain things, or you're annoyed. I thought it was a great way to filter and protect. So, because these were also your friends. So it was kind of like, maybe it's better to have a voice, a character that goes into this sort of, and you're like, okay, people wouldn't take, he'd make jokes like, "I don't know what you're doing up in there today," whereas if he went, "I don't know what you're doing in there today, Jill, in the studio," that really, he could say it through Camille or Bob George or all of them. And they were adorable voices.
They are adorable. Jill, do you remember the first time you heard Housequake? Like, did he play it to you as like a rough mix? And were you like, holy shit?
I still often, the other day I was looking for just the sample of "Shut Up Already," because, I like to always, I just want that sound just to, Housequake was like a jam. A lot of times there'd be like little parties going on. If he had like a party or an event, not a lot of a big event, but he would play out his songs to see how everybody kind of responded.
I've heard some, you probably heard this before, but fans saying that like Pharrell stole the drum beat for Hollaback Girl. Like, it's such a catchy from the beginning, but then it just the build up. So it's like the drums, and then you hear the guitar in the background, and then those fucking horns, man.
That's interesting.
Camille, the voice, just this has so many elements that I just love. You're right. I love the song.
Yeah.
I feel like we need Camille at the next presidential debate just to say, "Shut up already."
Button so that people can push it. It'd be the best.
Camille would be the best moderator in the world.
They just need to have Joe Biden's voice in the next ad with that "Shut up already, damn," and that'll be it. Yeah, that's it. Does anyone else have any thoughts on Housequake before we move on?
I just think there's a really funny line that U2's Joshua Tree, which is probably one of their best albums, was up against Sign of the Times at the Grammys, and of course Joshua Tree won. And although that album is brilliant and it's a masterpiece, every song kind of sounds the same. It's just like they're rock songs, a couple ballads. And Prince had this famous line where he said, "I could do any song off of Joshua Tree. U2 will not do Housequake." And that line, like every time I hear that song, I'm just like, man, he just let him have it.
That's amazing.
All right, so Housequake, I'd probably put in one of my top 10 favorite Prince songs of all time. Mm-hmm. And then when you're listening to the vinyl, I remember this little drum came in, and Ballad of Dorothy Parker came in. It sounded like it was recorded underwater.
Yeah.
It was such a unrolling song, and that song single-handedly made me a huge Joni Mitchell fan. I never knew who Joni Mitchell was, but then when Prince put in that little part of Help Me in Ballad of Dorothy Parker. I was riding in my parents' car and I heard Help Me. I'm like, this is a song from the Prince song. And that led me on a whole nother thing with Joni Mitchell. So what does everyone think of Ballad of Dorothy Parker?
One of my favorites.
Why did it start off like that, though? I always thought my tape was getting eaten.
I thought my record was warped also.
Yes,
So,
every time.
I was just listening to the podcast, like the 8-part podcast on Sun of the Times, and saying, there was the recording glitch. She didn't want to interrupt Prince at the time because it's like he was on a roll, and it was just he ended up liking it and keeping it. So I think for whatever reason, it worked.
Yeah, it does
Sometimes
work
mistakes
because
happen and they
there's
turn into
other
something
kind
beautiful.
of there's
Right.
other kind of weird glitchy noises in the album, so it does work. It's just the first time you hear it, and the production value is so nice on the other ones.
Right.
I loved it because it was like instantly removes you from the previous song. It's a totally different mood. And I love Prince when he's singing to a woman. I just
And he was singing about being in the bathtub, and it sure as hell sounded like he was recording from the damn bathtub, didn't it?
This is one of my favorites. It's one of my top 10, for sure.
And it's timeless. Like, if you play that song, you're not like, oh, there's an 80s song. Like, it's just timeless, I feel
Well, and I
like.
think it was on the Dream Factory, Crystal Ball, and Sign of the Times. So he obviously was like really fond of the song as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he performed it live a lot as well. So which means it was like an unofficial single.
True.
It's clever, though. I think he knew he was clever in it, right? I mean, like, he could really turn a phrase. It's this perfect little story, right, between these two
Sure.
people. And it's funny, and and it's highly sexual, but it's also like really cute and coy. It's a perfect little afternoon delight song.
Well,
Did he
back in the
have to
day-
split publishing with Joni on that? I've often wondered. Or was she cool with it?
I think she was cool with it because I've never seen her publishing company.
Me either.
And
Yeah.
She definitely that little
She might
part
not
there.
be cool with it anymore. I don't know, but
I don't think Joni's cool with anything. She's mad about everything.
Yeah.
Um,
I know he went to meet her a few times too around, so maybe they talked it out. I don't remember.
you know Dorothy Parker was dishwater blonde, though. There's no doubt about it. All right. Any other thoughts on Ballad of Dorothy Parker? I just want to say I'm having a blast. I love really talking about music, so thank you all so much.
I'm loving this.
Thank you.
All right, so
Thank you.
moving on to side 2. You turn the record over, and then you hear this beat.
Once again, just like with Housequake, it's like
Oh,
inevitable.
And I was like, what the hell? The song's just called It. And I remember, like, on the cover, just like in the handwriting, like, It. Like, what is going on here? Talk about a sexual song. I mean,
So-
That's my favorite one.
Prince
like,
is
so
horny as
favorite.
ever, man. Like and this one, I think it really highlights his voice too, because we all know he can do so much with his voice, right? So many layers, so many different sounds. But this is just
Sure.
that carnal desire of you can just hear it, just kind of the screeching, and I love it. I love this one better than Housequake, actually.
I feel like there's dirtier Prince songs, like
Absolutely.
Let's Pretend We're Married, but there's something about It that makes it like the dirtiest Prince song to me.
I think
It's not what he
the way
says,
he's
it's what he
singing to
doesn't
me.
say.
Right.
I
And
can
he wants
easily
to do
skip
it
over
everywhere. Right.
Every-
Exactly.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
on the floor and everywhere in the street. I mean,
Yeah.
I think he
love it.
captured himself quite perfectly.
I don't think it's nearly as clever, but
No,
that's
it's just raw.
that's just me. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just raw. That's a
I
perfect
could
way.
use.
to-
Raw.
It's a good way. I always skipped over that one.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not one of my favorites. It's not like part of the jam, I think, because it just
Interesting.
so I don't know, maybe I'm a prude. I don't know. I doubt it, because I was like Darling Nikki.
And you are
hardcore,
not a
but-
prude.
No, I didn't think so, but just to be on the safe side, I'm never sure.
We won't tell any stories about it. But that's what's great about music, though. Is different songs reach different people. There's never a right or wrong. When you listen to the song now, it has that crazy, like, synthesized orchestra at the end. It's wild. Like, He was definitely
Right.
on a trip on that song. My goodness.
I
just
mean,
have to add that,
I think it scared people too, some girls. But if he played it or a DJ played it out, you know, songs give people the license to say what they would never normally say in the bedroom, but because a lot of people aren't good with chatting. But once they get to sing a song and you see them on the floor doing all this and saying it, it's very interesting, very telling. Go on. Sorry, Jeffrey. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no problem. I was going to say in the live version of Forever in My Life from the Sign of the Times movie, when he just incorporates it towards the end in a completely different arrangement and screams those lyrics. I mean, is there a better live moment? I don't know, but that's one of them. That's one of them for sure. Definitely in the top 5.
Yeah.
All right. Any thoughts on it before we move on? All right. So you're listening to the record, and all of a sudden, this alarm clock shows up, and
We're gonna turn it over to.
we are hanging out with the teacher, Miss Kathleen. First came Lucy, right?
Then came Kevin. Third in line was me. All of us were ordinary. Oh my gosh, I could cry. That song was so, because we weren't normal. We went to Warren, Pennsylvania. And Warren, Pennsylvania, you got the first day of hunting season off, but you didn't get Martin Luther King Day off.
Wow.
So yeah, so it was a real terrible place to grow up if you were different in any way.
And
Except
people were really mean to us when we grew up.
Yeah, they really were. They had days devoted to beating us up, actually. It's called Skate Punk Day. You know, and it was sort of, anyway, everyone's got a fucking story. But the thing is like that one was, again, you know, where I was sort of developing who I was going to be. And I was definitely going to be Wendy. But then I was like, maybe I'm also going to be Cynthia, right? Like there was just this idea that he talked about different people, and he was so different and so accepting of the freaks, I guess, and that just was such a powerful thing because it made me feel like you could live like this, right? You could live like this and not suck. And I just was the most beautiful thing that we almost performed it in our high school, but that would have meant me showing up to high school and performing, and so didn't pan out. But that was the song we were going to do.
And this was a co-write with Susanna Melvoin, correct? Which she posts about quite often.
Right.
Well, it is a good story. I mean, I never really heard it until this reissue came out.
Oh, can someone tell it then? Because I don't know it. So if someone could tell it, that'd be great.
The 2-minute version is basically one of her friends was like mentally challenged or whatever, and she used to say this phrase "starfish and pee-pee," and somehow Prince asked her about her or something or other, and she told Prince the story, and then like 5 minutes later, of course, being Prince, he had the song, but then he changed pee-pee to coffee.
Good for him. Good for him. Yes, best decision yet.
But knowing Prince, there's probably a version called Starfish and Pee-Pee in the vault.
And talk about a transition from it to this. I mean, this song is just it's just fun. I mean, what's not to love about it? It's
a cute
good
song.
face. Just love it.
It's cute because I think we all knew someone in our school like that. So I think that it fit. And I like, you know, even with it and how, if for me, looking at each song is also a mirror of the last albums or whatever albums when he's going for, I guess, a hit or something. Like, I would say that it falls under the parameters of maybe Something in the Water or one of those kind of songs that gives that odd, really, really one that not everybody's going to like. And Starfish and Coffee kind of falls into, like, he had a template already that he knew. So Starfish and Coffee would be what, Free or what? It's another template.
I feel like almost Raspberry Beret, like that kind of whimsical.
That's it. Yes, that's it. Exactly it.
But it's such a nice counter to the first song, right? To Sign of the Times, because Sign of the Times is so dark and foreboding, and look at how terrible things are for everybody in this world. And then you have this beautiful story of youthfulness, right? And of children. I mean, and that I kind of also plays into that Play in the Sunshine, and which I realize is more drug references, but still, you know, there's that idea, right? Of finding joy. Same with Housequake, same with It, right? You have to find your joy, otherwise you get sucked down. And I can't wait till we get to the cross, but I'll shut up now.
You and me both.
And no disrespect to Suzanne. I'm such a snarky, like, bitch sometimes, so I'll edit out all my...
I hope I don't bring it out in you, Gloff, because I do that. I'm sorry. We are, like, I think, what do they call those? Folie à deux. Right? Like when two bad people get together and do really bad shit together.
Here we are. Any thoughts on Starfish and Coffee before we move on? All right. A saxophone comes in next. And in comes Slow Love, which was never one of my favorites. I'm not really like a ballad, soul ballad kind of guy. So someone else want to take the reins on this one? Because I kind of always skip this one, to be honest.
I agree. It's my least favorite track on the record. Although I like it. But there's a version by Carol Davis that actually is I prefer that version.
Oh,
yeah, I don't care for this one either.
Yeah.
Carol wrote it with him though.
Yeah. And fun fact about Carol Davis, she was on an episode of Sex and the City.
Yes.
Well, I guess Slow Love was a little too slow for all of us.
Well, I will say I do love a Prince ballad. Don't get me wrong. You know, the horns once again, and the falsetto, like it's good, right. It's just not my favorite Prince ballad. You know?
It was sort of a striptease sounding thing. You know, it had that striptease balladeer thing, and you have to be really in the mood because it can kill your vibe if it comes on in the middle of, you know, you've already been in Starfish and Coffee.
Right,
yeah.
This album is like all
It really is. You can't do one activity to this album.
No.
But I do think like Slow Love was a little too like I don't know, maybe Barry White for me. It was just a little too like smooth, and I was just like, I can't have that. I can't have that shit in my life.
Right.
Well, the smoothness did not last for very long because next comes in this little drum beat, and we are into Hot Thing, which I remember the first time I heard that song. It's really lo-fi. Like, that production is pretty, it's almost like demo sounding to me. I feel like it's not as fleshed out as some of his other productions, and that's what I kind of loved about the end of side 2. Like, I feel like these are a lot more raw than we heard before from Prince. So what does everyone else think of Hot Thing?
Super funky.
Yeah, love it.
Love it.
It's a perfect dance song. And there's so many good dance songs on that album, which is weird to me. But yeah, it's a really good dance song. You know, it's like Sexy Motherfucker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another one that's... Oh, go ahead, Jill.
He was always really good with the primal sense of what something was. I just really liked more when it was sparse, and it was really, when this was like really him, his ownership of everything was really his doing, everything pretty much. And the other ones have started to get really full of big productions, and I think I like the stripped down version of Prince better.
Absolutely.
I was going to say Primal too. Even has the kind of the scream in it, and this. Yeah, love it.
And even like the Hot Thing, like the way he sings, it's like, you know, he was turned on when he was singing that. There's no faking that.
Yeah, the vocal just sits so well in the groove. It just does.
And even though it's kind of an electronic song, to me, it does not sound dated at all. Like, that's another, so much of this album is just so timeless.
It really is. I mean, honestly, there's only some elements, and it's probably Slow Love, that feel dated to me. Otherwise, I'm like, yeah, this could have come out any time. It's perfect. And I don't think there's a lot of albums. Disintegration is one of them for me from a Cure perspective, but there's not a lot of albums that are like perfect all the way through. And this one was perfect. I mean, I think probably his first like 7 albums, I felt that way about Prince, but definitely this one.
This song almost sounds like some of that electro music that came out in the early 2000s. You know what I mean? It was way ahead of its time.
Electro, but then he sprinkles horns in there, which is just like, you wouldn't think they would go together, and It does.
And those are so funky. Like, those are so damn funky.
Yeah, and the way he mixed them was the way he tuned them in the song wasn't like too slick. They were kind of even reedy sometimes. The horns. But also Eric Leeds' entrance into his life really changed a lot of things musically. Eric had a huge impact on where Prince moved and evolved into, I feel.
Any thoughts?
Who's that? I'm sorry. Maybe I should have read the liner notes, but I was just going to talk about how much I love the album and only
Every
about
great
me.
sax solo that's on a Prince song is Eric Leeds.
Okay.
And then there was Atlanta Bliss.
That's one of my least favorite
other ones.
things.
Atlanta was on them, but yeah.
And when did Eric Leeds come into the Prince universe? Was it Parade or?
No, he was, I
He
think,
was
around Purple Rain.
Yeah, he was around even when he and I did G-Spot.
Okay. Oh, he's on G-Spot,
Which was,
isn't he?
well, he was. The really, really, really original demo is Prince playing sax.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, he thought he needed a saxophone, and he sent out Don Batts to go get one in like the middle of like the summer or wherever it was, in the middle of and Prince spent like all day going, burp, burp, burp. I mean, he clearly had never played it. Now I'm like in the house walking through. I'd been in there, and then he was just like, just give me a minute or so. But all day, sun was coming up, and all I could hear was, but he did it. He eventually got everything in place. And then I think later, since the album was, you know how long it took for me to put mine out. Then when Eric Leeds came along, he was like, "Hey, I got something," but he knew what he wanted on it, so he already, he had him get a saxophone. I was like, "Have you ever played this?" No, I mean, I'm not like. And he was holding it, and I'm sure there was stuff you were supposed to do before when you put it together too. I don't even know. There was no YouTube, nothing. So
that's amazing.
For hours, like all damn day, I had like tea. I was like, but he was so tenacious. He got it.
Oh my God.
Saxophone almost as big as he was. So like big.
Oh my God.
He had on a tank top and like his little shorts, like, because it was in the house off the thing, so he did not move. I was like, I'm still amazed at his dedication.
Wow. Oh my God.
Honestly, this is how I feel about Gloff. Like, if you grew up with him, like that was Jeremy. Like, oh, I think I need a piano. I guess I'm gonna have to learn to play piano. Like, that's how you literally played each one, and I would be just sitting there for hours and hours. Like, are we gonna go out? Are we going out anytime? Yeah, that kind of dedication blows my mind because I clearly don't.
And let's call it for what it is. I made you so mad we didn't talk for 10 years.
Oh my God.
I can carry a grudge like any motherfucker. Yeah.
Oh my God, this is the best thing in the world. Okay, but on that note, Jill, I do hope to have you back on here to talk about your album in the future, because I love it, love it, love it. All right. Side 2 wraps up with Forever in My Life, which is another song. It just sounds so raw. Like I know there's a version on the box set that's a little bit more produced, but this version that we grew up with and knew all these years, it's so lo-fi. How does everyone feel about this song?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good song. It's great.
I didn't know bluesy is the word to describe it, but just that rawness. It's just kind of like getting roots somewhere that I really enjoy it.
It was like an old Bayou song or something.
Yeah.
Forever,
Yeah, that's kind of.
Yes.
Yes.
Like you were previously talking about Al Green being a preacher, and you go, really? He is? And you go,
all of that, everything you. But I love it.
Yeah.
It had a love and happiness vibe to me. Just the stripped down, but yeah, by you kind of, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that drum machine track, like he just press play and there's not any fills, like it's just the same little drum loop through the whole song that never changes, and I kind of love it.
I do too. Very good.
Any final thoughts on Forever in My Life before we flip over to record 2? Does anyone need a little break before we tackle the second disc? All right. So,
I love this disc, Loff. This is where, like, I feel like it's real.
I will say side 3 of the record of Prince Sign of the Times might be my favorite run songs of all time. Like, just these 4 songs. I just remember, like, being the first time I heard them all, I'm like, this is some next level shit right here.
God.
And I must say, like, I was never a huge Sheena Easton fan.
Who was?
I mean, Morning Train.
I was.
You're the only one who wasn't, Loff.
I guess Sugar Walls was cool, but Prince wrote it.
Yeah. She was cool because she was affiliated with Prince, as far as I was concerned. But we can get to her later, I suppose.
So, Camille is back for the second time, correct? And there's a lot of Camille on this part of the record. When you got the look kicked in, I mean, it banged. The first time I heard it, and it still bangs. Like, I feel like Sheena Easton, like, she really brought it on this song.
She did. I can't imagine Prince wouldn't have let her bring it, but, you know, like that was, bitch had to bring it, right? Yeah. Or else just get off the stage because Prince will play both parts.
Yeah. Well, I read in either the liner notes or something or other that originally it was, like, not a duet, and I guess it was the last song put on the record. So, and it was apparently slower, which means there's a version of that somewhere in the vault that didn't get released. But I'd be really curious to hear that. And also, was it always a Camille track or, you know, I know Camille was a happy accident, but I would like to know more of the background of how Camille even came to be.
Me too. I know nothing about Camille other than Jeremy telling me about Camille.
And every Camille track is
years and years ago. Yeah, right. That Camille was like an alter ego kind of a thing. That's all I ever understood Camille to be.
And there was a Camille album, wasn't there?
He was going to make a Camille record because he had a new kind of version of music that Camille was doing. You know, it wasn't like anybody he signed, and I think he was maybe not looking to go and make a Camille like he'd done with The Time and all of that. So,
right.
Yeah, Camille was it was supposed to be a project. And I really think it should have, but I don't know.
He foreshadowed autotune.
Yeah, it's true.
Sure.
Jill, do you remember the first time you met Camille?
It was at Sunset Sound for me.
Okay.
I think Camille had been eking out, but the thing was there were boxes with the tape on them that had Camille written on the side that it was that project. Oh. So yeah, it was a more of a different rapscallion kind of person that was male, female, like maybe the embodiment of Prince and Vanity put together in one person. Like if he were a woman, I think that's who Camille was going to be. Almost, I don't want people to go crazy, but not trans, but because I wouldn't mind. But yeah, it was like a combination where there were no limits on.
Definitely a they.
Camille
was a they them. I feel like for sure.
Yes, for sure. I feel that Camille was like, yeah.
I feel like Camille was like a house mother, you know, like that kind of a like, you know, bitch kind of a thing. And it felt very draggish to me in a good way.
Yeah, but I think she was more, everybody would want to be Camille, men and women, because Camille could be either one, but she was fluid. They were fluid. If I look at it now, it's like, who would ever think that Starfish and Coffee was pretty much, you must have been talking about somebody who had Asperger's. I mean, there's a lot of things we've come to know now, but yeah, right. Camille didn't really have a conformity to sexuality or who, what, when, where. Yeah, free. Camille was really free.
And that's so ahead of the times, you know what I mean? It's so now.
Totally.
Yeah, I remember reading the liner notes, and I didn't even know that Camille was Prince for sure originally. You know what I mean? I'm like, is this a different person? Because, you know, back then, all you did is have Rolling Stone to read. So I didn't even know that Camille was Prince for sure the first time I heard the album. I thought maybe it was someone else singing on the song. So it's so interesting that in 2020, when gender norms are more challenged and more openly challenged, how ahead of the time this album was. That's called Sign of the Times. So it's kind of cool.
Well, you remember
Prince in the go ahead.
Go on.
I was just gonna say in the 1999 box set there was a song that came out for the first time called Vagina, which was half boy, half girl. You know,
yeah.
So I mean, he was exploring that even in 1982 or 1981.
Right. I think that when he, in those days, because we were using tape a lot, sometimes you'd slow down a track, speed it up to if someone needed to hit a note, if he needed to do stuff. But I think he started having fun slowing down a track, singing, and then you play it at normal speed, and then it just changed everything. So that's one thing that could have just sort of spurned it on and kept expanding into like, hey, why don't I just do a record like this, you know?
I remember like
feedback.
Sign of the Times was a pretty big hit, and then the second single, of course, was If I Was Your Girlfriend, which was not a hit. But I remember that
Man, such
even
a
though
good
it's like,
song.
you know, we're about to get to that one. I feel like the
People
world
weren't
wasn't
ready.
deserving. Yeah, the world wasn't deserving of that.
Yeah.
But You Got the Look was such a big hit. So any thoughts on You Got the Look before we move on?
It's a great fucking song.
I do
Great
love
video.
Listening to it in the car today. It's such a good song that, you know, makes you feel upbeat. I mean, it's one of his little pop masterpieces, right? You know, he knew how to write radio-friendly music.
80s pop song, right? Like that's what I lump that in there. It's just a great song.
I feel like that's the
And
best
I
use of
think-
Sheila E.
Sheena Easton.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Well,
Whatever that bitch's name is.
I also think that by that time, I think he realized, also at Steve Farnolli's urging all the time, his manager, like, you need a hit, you need a hit, you need
Right.
a hit. Because the other records, they were decent and they were artistic, but they weren't like, you know, going to keep the lights on.
Right.
Eventually, you have to come back. You have to come back hard. And I think he did. And I think it's not really one of my favorites because I don't really, pop songs have a funny thing for me, and I'm not saying it's not a great song. You can hear that it's a single. There's hooks everywhere, but
For
that's
sure,
just not
right.
where I vibe with Prince's music. I'm
Right.
more like, so yeah, this one was like, keep the lights on and let's expand and get big.
And wasn't Sheila E. on there, though, with the timbales? I feel like she had some good, like, fills in there.
Probably. She probably
I feel like
was.
you're right.
Knowing Prince, he played it all himself in the studio, and then
Right.
for the video, it was like, okay, you do this.
Yeah.
Some Pretty Women.
Sheila did everything on the track. No. All right,
No,
let's move on.
Sleeping in the corner.
All right. Phonogenics. We serve the tea here. Okay. All right. So how can we even talk about If I Was Your Girlfriend? Like, what
How can we not? Now that is better than It. That to me is like, It was like, I don't know, what I would expect an 8th grader to be writing about girls, you know, like I just want to do it here and I want to do it here and I just want to do it,
Right.
you know, it just was kind of heavy-handed, right? It had its place. But If I Was Your Girlfriend was like, oh, damn, you know, like he's talking about stuff that, and getting away with it because of the use of, you know, is it Camille?
I feel like this song
Right?
it made people ask a lot of questions. They didn't get it, or what was, you know, what perspective was he coming from, and gender bending in that way. But so that podcast again, who you love, Susanna Melvoin, Jeremy, she was talking about, he actually wrote it because he was jealous of the relationship between sisters, and kind of wanted to take her place, and like just the kind of the power struggle of that, which I never even got that from that song.
Yeah.
I
Really, yeah. I thought it was really, I mean, from a female perspective, it was real clear that this was about, not about being able to step into a role that is generally between two women, if we're talking about like a heterosexual kind of a thing, right? And it felt very much like, oh shit, like I never even thought about my man stepping in and doing that stuff. Not that I ever cared anyway, but
And some of the lyrics,
so sexy.
Clever. So clever with it, and the groove with it is very like puts you in that mood. I just love it. That's another one of my favorites.
I'd go as far as say that this is one of the best songs of all time by anybody. Like it's so unique, and it really touches on something so deep and so psychological. I feel like a lot of people, who else has gone there? You know what I mean? Like he really went somewhere different, psychological.
And it was funny when TLC covered it on their first album.
It wasn't bad. Their version was.
Oh, really? I never heard it. Oh, I bet it was.
But
good.
It just changes the perspective a little bit. But yeah, it wasn't bad.
I sometimes don't think that people who covered it understood it.
Right.
No.
Because that. No offense to TLC, but that's not what the point of the song was.
Yeah.
Right.
I totally agree with Joshua on that.
And it features, to me, one of the best lines ever, which is, and we'll stare into silence and try to imagine what it looks like. I mean, I spent hours just imagining that line and just thinking about what silence looks like. I mean, and I ended up writing books later on in my life. And I mean, that line is definitely something I've gone back to many times and thought, God, I wish I could write something that good.
And it was such an amazing way to end the song too. Like you would not expect that. I was not expecting that at all. I didn't know how it would end. Like how do you end this one, Prince? Are you gonna sleep? But it felt very much like it was it turned the whole thing, right? It from initially maybe feeling like it was moving into just purely sexual things into like bringing it back into this feeling of having this deep connection with somebody else, right? And that always makes me sad about Prince.
But I think that he captured something with the gender, with women in our relationships and what we have, we usually don't have with the men in our lives. I think it sort of, women had to question going to a movie and cry together and all of that. It's so interesting because with your Shakti energy, you would say as a goddess, as a woman, why would you be with what you pick? You understand? It's like to find exactly all the things that we look for, yet we're kind of programmed to go in the opposite direction. So I thought there was a real psychological exploration in all of this. Your closest relationships are with your own gender. However, typically you're not with that type of person at all. So I kind of liked what it made both sexes look at in their lives. So I kind of always expected Camille to be the one to like be the philosopher at Paisley Park, the philosophy of like, and full of like putting your contradictions on the table.
It's a great song.
It is. I think one of his best.
And I will say, as a
and guys were threatened. Straight guys were totally threatened by that song. They were like, "What the fuck is that?" I was so.
To be fair, straight guys were threatened by Prince. Period. Right? I mean, he was like, you couldn't. You.
Right.
Oh my God, you couldn't. I can't even speak.
They were, but they recognized something in themselves with him. The ones who ended up being, and maybe hopefully got some kind of freedom within it. And hopefully it made them all embrace people's differences more.
Yeah, I will say as a gay male, I've never had a relationship with another man as close as I've had with women. You know what I mean? Like my woman friends. So it's interesting that I approach the song from that angle. You know what I mean?
It is.
Please let me find a man that gives me everything that y'all give me.
Right.
I know.
I think interestingly, and perhaps Prince would agree, that that we're not really always successful when we put that much pressure onto what a relationship should be, right? And so I think that there's this cautionary tale in a lot of his songs where, you know, just like all those, his lyrics feel so real, right, and authentic, but at the same time, it seemed like his personal life was pretty tragic in many, you know, ways or whatever, and his loneliness was pretty profound in many ways too. And so I think that a lot of the times for me, it made me feel really terrible about other people, right? Rather than, I guess, you know, like warm and fuzzy because of the pressure that was on to find this, you know, amazing person, right? Whether it be female or male or, you know, whatever.
I like the feminine angle of Prince. I mean, I actually could go to a movie and cry. I think we went to see, what was that one where she had a lobotomy? What's her name?
Is that
Jessica
that
Lange.
girl?
Jessica Lange was in it was about the actress who had to have a lobotomy.
Francis?
Yes.
What was it?
We went there, Francis. Yeah.
Francis.
I mean, he was like, kind of could be like your best girlfriend.
Yeah.
He really could. He cut my own hair. We did things that were like two girls, not like, you know, but I'm saying like, you know, making cookies or cooking. He was, on that level, he kind of was. So I kind of find it so bizarre when he wrote the song, because I think he really knew every angle, because I think he had so many people in his life. I think he played many different roles in in different people's lives. He could be the paternal one, the mother, the son, the girlfriend, the boyfriend. It was like anybody's guess. There's so many parallel lives that he led.
Jill, I do have to ask, do you remember the first time he hit play and then this song comes out? Like this
song, he knew I loved this song, yeah.
Right.
We were in the car. We were in the car driving, and it was like in the middle of the night.
My God.
Because this was one where he called and said, I'm coming over. And it was like, okay, jump in the car. Our thing was we'd always listen, usually in the car for us.
That's what I've read a lot, Jill, is that like if it passed the car test, you know, you had like a banger. Like it was just an official like sound in the car.
Yeah, because he would always talk about McDonald's speakers and said that most people didn't have really great speakers. So it had to, and I remember I had a really shitty car at one point. He goes, let me try it in your car because you have really bad speakers. And true enough, and then he'd go back in and remix. Yeah, he would do that back and forth. And I was like,
so
thanks.
fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I almost want to like start crying hearing this story. Like,
I know.
God. Just
so cool.
In such a fucked up world, there's like these sweet moments, like the sweet moment of Prince playing Jill Jones, If I Was Your Girlfriend, in the car in the middle of the night. Like,
yeah,
these moments.
Yeah.
So,
great song.
Any thoughts on?
I thought it was flawless. Flawless.
Yeah.
Agree.
Like how, you know, radio stations tried to identify him, obviously because he was black, they, you know, as an R&B musician or whatever, and he was just not any genre, he was every genre.
Yes.
If I Was Your Girlfriend is one of those, it's not about anything, it's about everything, you know? Because it's like, it's just so
you're right,
big.
Jeffrey, that song was not going to go white radio. That was interesting because with this record, you know, he kind of lost a little bit of his gains when he did Around the World in a Day. And there were some he didn't have the same gains. He didn't maintain those. And that's why artists have to keep coming out with their hit. So there were points where they're like, go back to the end of the aisle, you know, like this would have to go through black radio to get over there again, which is really horrifying when you think about that they were going to do that, because there was a lot of like, no one really knew what he was saying. Like, you know, that song was a trigger for some folks. Just couldn't get the sensitivity of even a man being like that with a woman.
Yeah. I mean, from sort of a punk and goth perspective, Prince really did transcend, you know, like if you're listening to the Smiths and the Cure and Susie and the Banshees and shit like that, and you're only hanging out with other people who dress all in black and hate themselves, then you're not probably really listening to what's on the radio, right? And I never listened to Prince on the radio. Like I only hear like Raspberry Beret on the radio, right? You don't hear all of these songs. I would have never heard this song on our radio in Buffalo, ever, ever, ever.
Never.
So I think, the fact that he was, obviously that he was Black, and that he was, proudly Black, and that he proudly identified with the whole gamut of Black music. And yet he was doing such amazing things that kids like me were like, holy shit, that's tremendous. I mean, the fact that, it just makes me really sad, because I'm like, oh, Prince, you could do so much more, right? I'm just
I think he was always the provocateur. We know that. I think that he tonally liked to have songs that, if I use a template, would be in the category of a lady cab driver, because tonally, that one, this one, and then Strange Relationship, they all have a tone with the same keyboard sound. And there's a pocket that he liked with that. So those are just my kind of feelings, because it's sort of like he liked that kind of vibey vibe thing.
You said, Jill, it was like another template, right? He was kind of like pocket.
Yeah, I feel that fell in the line with providing that provocative kind of song on some level, where it will either repel people or completely make them devotees.
And I kind of feel like that template didn't last too much longer after this album.
You're right.
To me, this album sounds, especially with the horn, a lot like Do the Right Thing, which came out, I think, a year before this album came out. And it has a lot of sort of similar background noises, too, with lots of noisy neighborhood and children and joy, but a lot of, terrible tragedy, too. So I always put those two together. I'm not sure that that's accurate or anything, but those horns that you were talking about, Jill, always make me think of Do the Right Thing. And how that permeates that time period, too.
And I'd say, like, this template is what really made me love Prince. So that's why, as a fan, I didn't get this from him too much after this album. Like, there's stuff I liked, but that really deep, strange, unique thing that he brought in this template, going back to all those other songs, like, I just feel like it wasn't around too much.
And
maybe Love Sexy. But
don't kill me, but this was kind of the peak, right? You think this was like the pinnacle?
Ooh, really? Are we saying?
I'm asking, like, do you, like, creatively? I mean, it's my favorite album. It's the best album. Did he ever do anything to surpass this?
Oh no, not in my opinion.
As a full album? No, probably not.
That's what I mean, album-wise. I feel like this was the peak in his.
Yeah.
But I think.
Oh, go on. Sorry.
No, I was just thinking like what he'd been doing, right, in the last 10 years, which was really, I think, doing some new interesting things, that were kind of really bringing back a lot of soul and, 60s music. I think that he maybe could have done some other really amazing things, like in a sort of a Dylan-esque kind of way where, after maybe a generation or whatever, he would have other amazing things. But yeah, I have to say that this, to me, is probably the pinnacle. And I love Seven. But
I thought Anastasia was another template that fit into this. Anastasia was like a crazy song.
Anastasia was my favorite.
The problem with Love Sexy is that it frustrated so many people because they couldn't listen to it, right. And I think that was just his cheeky behavior and wanting people to listen to that whole song in full for what it would reveal, because that one was some kind of labor of love for him, because I guess after the Black thing, the Black album debacle, this was the epiphany he thought that should occur, about the ladder and blah, 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 or God and all those heaven, I wish you heaven. those kind of things. And they were lovely songs. It's just, I think his collective consciousness started to change and shift. And, you know, in the music business, it's always going to stay at the same level of a collective. You just find a different pocket of people that go. But it's always going to, that's why it's recycled stuff. I don't think he wanted to be that anymore.
I did also love Positivity from Love Sexy. That was one of my favorites. All right. Any thoughts on If I Was Your Girlfriend before we move on?
I think based on the time we spent on it, it's probably the favorite track.
I know.
Yeah.
All right.
True.
Well, next was a Strange Relationship, which I always loved.
So good, yeah.
Another, like this whole block of songs. That was, and it was with the box set out, we can finally hear like the original version with Wendy and Lisa on it. And I really strongly prefer the Prince solo version that he came out with.
Oh, I haven't listened to it because again, I just not that interested in any other version other than that radio one that I heard when I was like, you know, so
well,
young.
it's on the box set. You'll hear that there's a Chet Pettibone remix, which means that they were considering it for a single at one point, and it's also fascinating because I mean I think that song would have been.
It's a fantastic.
It probably would have done
song,
stronger than, well, If I Was Your Girlfriend, maybe.
How about the line letter? Like we've all been in this strange relationship, right, where I can't stand to see you happy more than that. I don't want to see that. Just like emotional tug of war of like.
And it went so well with, you know, If I Was Your Girlfriend, right? Like, you know, those kinds of highs and lows and those tides that you have. Yes.
But he wrote this song in '82. He wrote it when we were on tour, on the 1999 tour. And he gave it to Vanity. And I remember because she played it to death before we ever, and we always had our little shit between us, but, and she was just like, and what it wasn't really 100%. Yeah, we were all like, oh, here she comes with her boombox and strange relationship. I will never forget that song. But not only that, it has that calypso-y type of thing in it.
Right.
So there was a part where he was considering her singing it for the next Vanity 6 album. So that was, you know, was hard to say. Well, she left, so it was
that
like
worked out nicely.
she left, you know. But I think that, that's an old song that he dusted off. It was too good. It's
interesting because, you know, obviously he had so many songs that were sitting around in the vault. Like, I wondered, like, what went through his mind where I was like, that's the song I need, you know. Whereas some of the other ones, because I mean, there's so many on this Sign of the Times set that are like, he must have just forgotten about that one because that one was really good. Right. And then there's other ones where it's like he wouldn't stop, he wouldn't quit until that song was on an album.
You know what would sometimes get him back into a song would be a rehearsal.
Okay.
Playing on the piano, and then he would just be playing, and then because he was so I don't know, I mean, it's like tones and sounds, he could just sing a lot of his catalog at the same time, you know. And then he'd get stuck on something and then have the band and tell them, I want you to play this bass line. I want you to play this guitar part. And that's pretty much how rehearsals were, or sound checks. So, and that was, I think, how he always worked out his songs. So you're right, Jeffrey, it's so interesting because he could have just been, you know, it could have been in the car. You know, the song was on a CD or something in the car, and that little things like that could bring back new memory.
It's interesting because I feel like lyrically this goes right along with the Sign of the Times level of lyricism. Yeah. It's interesting that's an older song.
It's old.
But I totally could hear Vanity singing, I guess you know me well, I don't like winter. That seems like a very Vanity line.
Yeah.
I think that it fits like smoothly into from If I Was Your Girlfriend. It just kind of like flows right into it perfectly. And I don't know if this is true, but I've heard before that he made songs, and if they didn't fit into the album, he would save them for the next one to make, you know, and make songs just kind of flow together like that. So I don't know if he had it in the back of his mind, or like Jill said, something just reminded him about it.
Yeah, this was a good song.
Mm-hmm.
The Wendy and Lisa version kind of had this droning sitar through the whole thing that wasn't my favorite.
So you see, he was trying it over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you can see that he's like, hey, let's still working it out. And then he found the best home for it.
Right.
But it's interesting. The lyrics are so him and Vanity. I mean, when you hear the shattering, like how, I seem to get a kick out of Doing You Cold. It's like, but it summed them up completely. And yeah, it was ironic because she's happy with the song and we're like, but it was just the way the dynamics were,
I just got the chills.
Dynamics. Yeah.
That's the tea that when you don't hear on the other
she
podcasts.
She was no dummy, about the song. It was just she knew. It's like that should tell everybody why it just wasn't going to work out.
Yeah.
Well, any thoughts on Strange Relationship before we move on? All right. Well, side 3 ended with another song that Prince pulled from the vaults. I believe I Can Never Take the Place of Your Man was it the Dirty Mind sessions or the early 80s, wasn't it?
79 is
79?
I was going to ask too, because I've read 79, I've read 82. I didn't know.
It definitely doesn't sound like 79, but like.
Right.
I mean, they obviously had access to the vault, so who knows?
I always love the song. I love it. It's such a rock and roll song.
It is. It really is. Yep.
Very
radio friendly.
But also just the storytelling. Like, this is one of those songs where I just, imagine everything he's talking about. He just does a play-by-play that's so, he just paints a picture with this one. It's just lyrically, I really love the story he tells and how he tells it.
It's fascinating that he kept the lyrics mostly intact from the original version.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which is pretty fascinating that, he wrote that when he was 19 or something like that, or he
was
would have been
good
19.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it does follow that formula, though. Like, he knew how to write a pop song. He knew how to do that hook. He knew what was.
Were just,
it's just perfect. Yeah, it's just perfect.
But it's so weird because for me, it could be 79 only because if you look at how in Dirty Mind, especially that one part, ask me if I wanted to dance, you know and I know. Like those harmonies and stuff were very Dirty Mind era. Where he could run into the next bar, like the next phrase with these really very cool harmonies and they'd be layered, so it kind of, I think that was another one, Jeffrey, where it hovered around and just kept getting reworked.
I definitely
it's fascinating that he never mentioned it in his lifetime that song existed from such a long time before. He just, when they announced the track listing for the box set, it was we all were like, what?
Yeah, right.
Because people knew about the Strange Relationship existed from before, and some of those other songs were kind of floating around, but that was one where it was like, what? Wait, where did that, what?
Right.
I also love how the end kind of has that extended thing that kind of reminds me of Sign of the Times also. That's a great guitar solo right there.
Yes.
I'm not a big guitar solo kind of guy, you know what I mean? But this one kind of did it for me, I'll be honest.
But in the live version, he really it's obviously by then he really worked it out to a level that it couldn't go in the studio version. And it's unfortunate that the studio version isn't more like the live version where he just really lets you have it with the guitar solo.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, when again, I'm not a super fan, so I'm limited in what my knowledge is. But he's known for being such an amazing guitar player, and yet so much of that seems to be known by him playing with other people, like his skill. There's not a lot of songs where he just goes crazy like that. When did that become more of a Prince thing?
He always kind of hid it in the background of songs. It was
it
always
was
there.
sprinkled
It's
in.
just it wasn't as apparent as when My Guitar Gently Weeps, when he just came out on stage and tore everybody to shreds.
I think maybe Bambi, a song like that where he's
And even I'm Yours on his first album is like it's like a heavy metal song practically.
Yeah, it is very, very much like prog rock, you know?
Yeah.
So
let's be happy you didn't stay there.
I know when we talked about TLC as far as covers, you know who covered this song?
Who?
You're gonna fall out of your seat. Jordan Knight from New Kids on the Block.
Oh my gosh!
Oh, I remember that.
It's a straight ballad. He like slows it down. It's like straight like ballad love song.
Oh,
So I guess like Warner Brothers probably cleared at the time, but it's interesting. So I encourage you to listen to it. Then let me know.
So what was better?
Put an entire hour on that.
Yeah, right. It's just a different arrangement. Like TLC tried to stay true to the formula and that template we talk about, but yeah, Jordan Knight slowed it down.
I feel like Prince covers were so hit and miss, and everyone's gonna probably crucify me for this one, but I didn't hate Mariah's version of the Beautiful Ones. Like I didn't hate it. And that's such a sacred song. Okay,
it is a sacred song. Yeah, move on.
Yeah,
move on.
I don't know her.
I never heard it.
No comment.
All right, Clark Brooks just texted me. He wants to join us for the last little section, so that's awesome.
No.
So you flip over the album to the final side, and you hear this little lonely guitar, The Cross. We all can agree this is an amazing song, right?
It almost made me believe in God.
I actually, so I'm Jewish, and I was so curious about religion after the song, and so I wasn't driving yet, and I say to my parents, I kind of want to go buy a Bible, and they were like, what?
What happened?
No, it's crazy. So I grew up Christian, met my wife. I converted to Judaism too, but this is one of those songs, this and Al Green's Jesus is Waiting, that just pull some spiritual heartstrings that just have me from the opening. It's just amazing.
Totally agree. And again, so fucking powerful, right? To go to bookend the sign of the times, right? And that sort of apocalyptic horror that we're facing. And then to have this, again, deeply quiet, right? Spiritual and quiet song that was just so thoughtful about, the fucking horrors. You know what it reminds me of, Gloff? It reminds me of Sinead O'Connor's, what was it? The squirrel, Universal Mother.
Oh yeah,
Universal Mother, remember? And she sang some song that was similar to it, and it was all about Black Boys on Mopeds. Anyway,
that's such a good song.
Remember that? Well, right. But it was all about like the suffering of real people. Just like that, the beginning, right? Somebody picks up a needle and suddenly, they die of this horrible disease. And then it just, the upliftingness of like being in a choir and just being hit by it. Oh my goodness.
Beautiful. It's beautiful.
But it's not preachy, and it's
not at
interesting that like later on in his life he became very preachy. And this one, even though it has the title The Cross, it's not. It's basically like, this is what I believe. Check it out, and that was one of the things that like interested me kind of even in religion at all, was like listening to Prince's music and being like, oh, I don't really know much about that subject. Let me try and find out.
This to me was pre-knowing he was Jehovah's Witness, so that was a whole other.
Well, he wasn't at that point, was he?
He was raised, wasn't he? Raised Jehovah's?
No.
His mother was. Oh,
Seventh
really?
Day
I thought
Adventist.
someone in the family.
Seventh Day. I'm sorry. Yeah, I tend to
right.
put a couple of those together. Sorry. So then he converted to that. That's just So that was a struggle, but that song is a perfect, beautiful
His
song.
dad was around during this time a lot, so. And also being competitive, let's be honest, U2 was doing quite well with that kind of verbiage as well.
Oh,
absolutely.
I think that, why not? But also,
It's funny. Ann and I were in a band together in like 1994, and we never did covers, but we covered The Cross and I Believe in Jesus by Donna Summer.
Oh, that's funny.
So why were the only covers we did these Christian songs? It's so funny.
I guess that might go a long way in explaining why people like us.
Wasn't this like around the time Tears in Their Eyes and all that kind of stuff?
Yes.
that whole vibe. That
And
was
Tammy
that,
and the Bakers. And
I mean,
shit
we were all
around, so
dressing
yeah,
a certain way. There were like people from Guatemala wearing like rosary
yes.
beads and
a lot of shit happening in Nicaragua.
But then there was just, he's spending a lot of time in LA, and you know, you'd go out to Flaming Colossus, you'd see Bono, blah, blah, blah. They were doing very well with this Christian. And I just feel that the collective of that moment was this kind of a song. It was the vibe.
Do you think that it went, oh, sorry, Gloff. Do you think, though, that it went far in sort of reclaiming a spot within the Black community because it was such a spiritual kind of a song, and to end it on such a spiritual song?
I don't know,
I guess I'm throwing that out there.
Then he would put that song God and run it backwards, and you know, so I think he toyed with God a lot, and some people in the Black community would never be appreciative of that.
Yeah.
I mean, the evangelical ones, I suppose, or whatever. But he toyed a lot. Was there some kind of redemption coming back and forth? It was really hard to tell where he stood on God. If I were watching from afar, I don't know what I would have believed, you know, being in it. There were just also knowing what the marketing could be versus knowing, you know, that U2 just like hit number one and everybody's like, wow, you know, you kind of know he was an incredibly territorial person and competitive. He needed somebody to compete with. And this time, the only people to compete with were externals, not people around him in that anymore. Maybe. I don't know.
Just another reason to fucking hate you too.
I love U2. That was the craziest thing. I was like really
I liked him back then too because of
you know,
course they
I
were
was
Irish
like
and hot.
probably going, yeah, I went to see U2 last night. Oh,
That's
can
funny.
you get me some tickets to U2? I mean, that was probably the worst thing I ever did.
That's funny.
Are there backstage passes included? Yeah, I mean, you know, go ask, you know, and he would rush you off to go call somebody to ask for him. I was like, okay, get me some tickets to see U2. Why you want to go and see U2?
And then you left him alone in the studio and he recorded The Cross.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Thanks, Jill.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Let's look at that date. Was there a U2 concert?
Yes. Yes.
I did love how the song builds, though. I mean,
So
it was a little bit
beautiful.
different of a structure.
I like the guitar.
Yeah, it was dirty. It was still dirty. Like there was
But
a
it was-
dirtiness to it, but not
was-
like a sexual dirtiness, but like a street dirtiness to it.
It was
And I loved
very 1960s, 70s George Harrison to me. It was still hanging on to the Indian. You know, like, let me get my.
And he didn't even need Wendy and Lisa for that.
No.
No.
I'm going to edit out all these little comments I'm making.
Actually, what night was that? What night did they say that he recorded that? Because I do believe I had a birthday. And I had a birthday and he didn't come to the birthday party. And that could have, and he said he was going to record. So I've often thought that it was either that or the latter. I think it was that one, because it's the one where I have a picture. His dad came and he told me Prince was in the studio.
Oh, wow.
And I think it would have been recorded out here at Sunset Sound. I threw myself my own surprise birthday party that year. So I remember.
You got to do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Yeah, I went, oh, wow, ooh.
All for me?
Does anybody have any
I
thoughts?
have one quick question for Jill, because I know we know that some of the songs were in LA. The one song in Paris, the next one we're going to talk about, and then obviously in Minnesota. But so when I went on tour at Paisley Park, the guide said that some of the songs from this album were recorded in Paisley Park, but I can't find any. It was
That
all.
one wasn't. That one wasn't.
Right. Not this song, but any of the songs. I can't find that any of the songs were.
I know that It's Gonna Be a Beautiful Night. We recorded it, the overdubs at Sunset Sound, I believe. Some other stuff. He brought all that stuff back.
Right.
And it was in the studio, and he did all the overdubs and stuff there. So I don't think they have really tracked it. They should start writing this stuff down.
Right.
You know, Dwayne Tudall has a pretty good book that's almost accurate on certain things. There's just a lot of discrepancies because Prince would fly around his tracks all over the world in places, and that probably gets a little confusing for people to determine, because even Strange Relationship, if I'm not mistaken, was done on a break. I thought it was somewhere in Tennessee or somewhere around at a studio somewhere. That's just all that stands out to me, because he and Vanity went together wherever they were, and I think so did Lisa and Wendy, or they flew back to LA to do it. But yeah, so yeah.
Cool. Well, speaking of It's a Beautiful Night, featuring Jill Jones on vocals. So, Jill, you sing on that song.
Yeah.
And it's so loose. Like, I remember the first time I heard the album, it's such a loose, extended song that's not as manicured and intellectual as some of the other songs on the album, but it did feel kind of like an exhale after a lot of the other songs.
Especially coming off the cross,
Yeah.
Right.
We're being joined by Clark Brooks.
Hey, Clark.
Just to get you up to speed, we're talking about we've made it up to It's a Beautiful Night. So we're just about to talk about that track. I think you're on mute though. Nope, still on mute.
Oh, sorry, I was muted.
There you are.
Hey, Clark,
I'm
looking
boomer.
good.
I don't know what I'm doing.
You're looking good,
Happy
Clark.
to be here. Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. It's great to see everyone.
Nice to see you.
We're having a blast talking about Sign of the Times. I can't speak for everyone else, but I know I'm just having a good time in my life. So, Jill, tell us about It's a Beautiful Night. What a song.
I just sang sort of beefed it up a little bit because it was a little bit sparse, but he wanted it to sound like a real lot of voices, big, and he wanted that top note. So he didn't have it on the tour. So that was kind of what I did.
Because this song does feature the Revolution, doesn't it? If I remember correctly.
You know what? I wouldn't know if they were there or not, to be honest, because I did my whole thing separately.
Okay.
Yeah. It's always hard, even listening to this record. It's always, and I'm pretty sure it'll just be like that in the future because, like I said, just as he had lived parallel lives, he did parallel things with his music. So sometimes people will go, that's me on that, or I'm singing on that, or whatever. It's really difficult because of the different kinds of mixes he had going on, because he would call in a lot of different people. I mean, the main question would be, who's in the final mix? Right. And I just don't think that they'll ever be able to determine, with the way it seems like bookkeeping or keeping notes went, it doesn't seem like that was being taken care of too well.
I believe, and I was a liner notes geek when I was a kid. I believe that you and Suzanne are credited for lead vocals on this one.
I don't know. I never really, would know what it is.
That's so interesting.
And it's tricky because it's really tricky. It's tricky to say because the liner notes were not always the truth.
Right.
In the Prince world. I mean, I don't recall Susanna being on it. I just don't. I was there, but he could have put her on lower or later. But it's really interesting. But from day one, everybody lied on their liner notes, about what they did, if they wrote this. So, it's very Trumpian what he did. It's like speaking from two sides out of his mouth. I mean, so you don't really know. And we've got a lot of fucking chaos at the end of it.
Right.
So that's a Gemini for you.
Word.
And then we have Sheila E. on the Trans-Mississippi rap, correct?
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
that was, yeah, she liked doing that stuff.
When I was listening to the song, I'm leading up to this, just writing notes down. This was the song where I heard it, just a little bit of that funkiness, but as a band leader too, he really stood out to me. And I don't know if hear a little bit of that George Clinton, or I don't know if it's more Sly, but he's just really interacting in a way that's kind of, true to just his lineage of musicality. I dig this song. I really like it.
I keep remembering looking at footage though, along with doing the singing of that. I remember the recording of looking at this footage, and even him, Prince loved to really dissect himself. So did he have the footage, Jeffrey, is what I'm asking.
Probably. I mean, the track is recorded on the Parade tour, and it was basically almost entirely instrumental. That most of the parts where you hear Prince were recorded that night, and then almost everything else was recorded later on.
Wow.
Because he had it where I just remember it being, the board is here, but there's also you could see the footage. So that's all I know, and just knowing, yeah. So all hands on.
There's versions I've heard where he mixes in parts of some Madhouse songs in the extended jam versions you've seen from the First Avenue concert that was on YouTube for a couple weeks. I prefer that. I wonder why that never made it into, the album's one thing, but then also the film. But that song goes on for 12 minutes in the film anyway, though.
What's so great about everybody who follows him, what I find is that the true fans, what's so cool is that he spent so much time on those extended versions and all these things. And, a lot of artists in those days didn't really do that. They didn't, because you kind of take a hit financially with a lot of those releases because just a B-side or however putting too many things on an album and all that kind of stuff, the cost of the plastic, all of that. But what's so interesting is you guys really do appreciate it and notice it. Kind of, I hope he realizes those nuances, because even sometimes I would be like, oh my God, how many times are you going to play this little riff? And yet you guys really, so it's quite impressive. I got to say, very nice.
It's funny because whenever back in the day, whenever an unreleased thing would come out, everyone would especially if it was an alternate version of a song. If you're in a room with a bunch of Prince fans, everyone will look at each other at that exact moment when there's a nuance or a change. It's it's
so cool.
Crazy.
That
it's pretty fun.
Cool.
Yeah, it's jarring in a good way.
Hmm?
Yeah, it's like hitting an unexpected bump on a road you've traveled before or something. Yeah.
Right.
In the final version of It's Gonna Be a Beautiful Night, there is that Jill Jones classic run where I can't hit that note, but there's a classic little Jill part in there that I've always loved since I was a kid. So
aw, thank you. It was a fun song. It was fun to do.
Good song.
It's interesting that he pretty much stripped the Revolution off the record and then decided to have one little last here's the Revolution, the last little bit of it.
I think there was just some tension going on around that time from that tour. I don't hold me to it, but I do believe there was. And, everything he did was intentional. If you sit and go, why is this? Then there's something there.
I remember at that time, it might have been the film version, but Rolling Stone, who was usually very complimentary in their reviews of everything he did, kind of dismissed that song. I think it was the movie version, and they said it was just more of the same funky romp he's done a million times. They weren't impressed, but I think most fans really loved that number, though.
I think they did too, and I think that also by that time, different people in his group and proximity started to know different journalists and different people that could actually, hear stories of him and not be able to separate the personal shit they heard about him in Hollywood. And, because at that time it was, I'm not saying people did this deliberately, but some talk would get around. And so if you notice, there started to be this kind of vibe anyway that just sort of started to be like, well, we're over Prince now. We're going to just be over this. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of interesting. And that comes from expansion and then people loving to hate who they once loved.
It's always a cycle. It's awful.
It is, and then you have people who you've brought on board, they go into other realms, and it can really change your reputation on a certain level. Especially if you know journalists from Rolling Stone. So I think he learned it was better to get allies than not have them in those locations and start to assign like a Neil Carlin and be like, let me just get somebody who's going to have my back in writing. Although many people don't feel that right now, but it's like, it is what it is. It's a nasty business.
And then it's funny the way, if you're around long enough, the way people come around, because I swear when Prince died, so did all the people who used to make fun of me for listening to him, because
of course.
All of a sudden everybody's like, yeah, I've loved him for years. Like, what?
Right?
You were calling me names a week ago, But
yeah.
I was thinking about that too. Right.
Oh, sorry.
No, that was the same thing. I was echo what Clark said. Yeah.
One of my professors was she was a PhD candidate, and she was really fucking hard. And hey Max, sorry, my daughter just came in here. Hold on, Bo. And she was like somebody that I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be like this woman. She was just so amazing, and she was this tough Black woman, and I loved her. And she was a diehard Prince fan, like diehard Prince fan. And I was listening to, I think, this album in my car, when you're sharking and waiting for parking in a college lot. And she came over and we had this connection, and forever after we were like friends. And I'm like,
oh, wow.
Like that, it was just this moment that transcended,
so
cool. Here I am, just this white girl, doing Black studies. And then there was like this moment where I was like, maybe I'm not just a loser, right? Like it was really amazing though. And she was brilliant, like it just, I felt like he really did transcend. I think that he did lose popularity, and I think that he definitely lost it when he was going through all those Warner Brothers issues, right? And he changed his name, and people were like,
yeah.
And then, but I think before his death, he certainly came back around from that, because people were like, that was about ownership, and, like they
right.
that, and I think that's just the disappointment of, of the current crisis, is that, he definitely, I think, was going to do a lot of other really cool things, and it felt like he was settling in to this kind of, maybe not a grandpa, but like, your really cool uncle, that was going to be, it felt for years that he couldn't trust people. Like he had always brought people and made them stars, right? Like all these different, people, right? And then of course they were all like, stay with me forever, and then, and he was like, break up, it's right. And there was always, I felt like that was such a burden, and then he distanced himself completely. And then it felt like he was really coming back around to kind of seeing himself as, as a mentor, right? As somebody that could be more present in the music scene, and that to me is the greatest disappointment of all.
Yeah, I agree. I apologize. I'm eating dinner while you guys are talking. I won't chew with my mouth open though.
Even the fact that he was working on the book, and then there were rumors that he wanted the house to be a museum, and how much we knew that he valued his privacy. The fact that I think there was just his life was going through a different phase.
I think it's sad that anybody would want their house to be a museum. I want it to be a home first.
Yeah.
Right.
That was not a home, but it was how he wanted to live. But I think there was such a detachment from material things. And you can even hear it in the last albums. There's a detached kind of vibe. I think the earlier Prince years, you got all of him, good, bad, ugly, everything. But I think as it went on, he just, was sort of like drifting from the planet anyway. I don't really think he was really here anyway. I think his mind was on something else.
Yeah, I can't imagine him growing old and petering out like Lou Reed,
Well, he had
and
nothing
that
else
was
to-
totally fine with me. But
Oh my God, I wanted that. I wanted him to have some kids that put him through 13 and 14 and 15. Damn it, he escaped that. I so wanted to be like, welcome to the club where you're not shit, where you just they can't stand you. You know?
They don't care. They don't care about any of it.
Yeah, I just really wanted him to experience that one, that. So,
Hey, Jill?
damn it.
What was with the tearing down of houses after he moved out of them? Was that part of what you're talking about with like just wanting to distance himself from stuff? Or, I mean, it's like he moved out of a place and then not only just didn't sell it, just ripped it to the ground, though.
I mean, to me, that makes a lot of sense, though, if you're trying to control your everything after everyone else has taken it from you for years. I just felt like that was a lot of, felt a little kind of controlling, but if I were Prince, I probably would have burned that shit.
Well, it's like a never look back sort of attitude, and if it's not there, you can't look back, so.
It's kind of like an emotional detachment, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. But I do think that you do need sometimes to have things that are meaningful and keep you grounded. Yeah. And, I do, but that's not how he chose to live.
Well, it sounded like at the end he was kind of just surrounded by yes men.
Yeah,
and women.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
And, and also coupled with the fact that he was obviously in pain and coupled with the fact that what more is there to do?
Yeah, that's the scary thing. I remember before my grandmother had passed away, one interesting thing, she stopped watching her stories. And it sounds trivial, but when people, you do control what you want. I think that his interest levels or whatever was happening, you're right, Jeffrey, I don't know. And yes, men, but I don't think he wanted any other kind of men or women.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think if anyone would have told him no, they would have been fired
At any point in his career, almost, I feel that it was probably that way, right?
I think that accelerated over time. I think that accelerates when you start letting other people in, because what you're seeking is seeking you. Isn't that what Rumi says? So if you're seeking fame and fortune, and there's always something that you leave out that you really needed, to prevent hell, it's a really horrible business. And to keep yourself from turning into somebody just avarice and greed and all of those things, but yet, look at who his peers started to have to be. People who couldn't even play instruments, and it had to be pretty fucking boring. So he tried to find as many good musicians as he could, even the new girls. But, we're talking about young kids who are sampling people's music, and here he is trying to break his neck to get music put back in the schools and get him instruments, and they just want to talk about bullshit or how bad it is in their neighborhood. You see, there's always something I don't know. It's depressing. When you see this cycle in the circle over and over, what do you keep writing about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't need to bring everybody down.
Well, now that
we know how the story ends, though, yeah.
I just need a bathroom break. I'll be right back.
All right, cool. We'll take a little break. We'll take a little break, and I'll edit.
What are you saying? I look terrible on it?
Hey, while we're taking a break, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, I think you and I have a mutual friend.
Who's that?
Gail Worley.
Oh, yeah, of course. That's my New York bestie.
Yeah, your name has come up several times. I've known her for years, and
that's hilarious.
Yeah, you and Jeffrey should meet, and it's never worked out.
I love when my friends meet each other.
Where do you live?
I'm in Tampa, Florida.
Okay. Yeah, Gail and I are like BFFs.
Yeah, I connected with her over her blog years ago.
Oh, Whirly Gig, yeah.
So, yeah.
Everyone needs to come visit us in Tampa.
Well, I have a standing invite to visit Gail, and she's going to show me all the cool stuff in New York that
Cool.
tourists don't know about. Yeah.
Yes,
so.
and pretty much every place you'll go, she'll have a Jeffrey story.
Aw.
Oh, cool.
My light
Yeah.
is terrible.
Her and I literally like did everything in New York.
Nice. Well, I'll have to tell her that we've connected. So.
Yes, that's hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, back.
All right.
I have my audio on. I'm like going, yeah, lighting here. I can't fix this light.
Oh, you look
Anyway,
great.
because I can't see anything half the time.
You're beautiful, Jill Jones. So
Thank
fuck
you.
off.
How are you? my love?
Yeah, you look
How
great.
dare.
All right. We have one song left to discuss, and then we're going to just do a little talk about the deluxe edition, then we'll call it a night. Adore, honestly, was never one of my favorite songs, so I'm going to let
Oh, Jeremy.
What?
Oh,
The line I ain't fucking just for kicks. I mean, right there,
Wow.
alone, that song right there, you start getting naked when you hear that.
I gotta agree with Gloff. That one ended hard for me. And
Wow.
not in the sweet spot.
Wow. That is one of my favorites.
you. Really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Now, why do you guys love that song? Tell me. Maybe I can.
It's just pretty. It's just a pretty song.
and Jeremy, you're saying you don't like the Prince ballads, but that's my like.
See, I've only ever had men that treated me bad, so I had no use for the ballads.
See,
I
that's
don't
you.
have any use for a ballad that's sweet. I have use for a ballad like Sometimes It Snows in April.
Yeah.
I'm all over that shit.
Oh, well,
right?
that's
But, you
that's
know,
amazing. But
yeah.
one of my favorite Prince ballads. I just love it. I just love it.
I just always felt like there was no hook. Like, I just couldn't figure my way through the song.
So, heavenly angels crying tears of joy don't do it for you bitter people.
Right.
Not at all.
That's-
That's quite the opposite.
Yeah,
actually.
hard sell,
I'll
man.
collect
That's
those
a hard-
fucking tears. No. Mm-mm. I mean, I think it was sweet. It was sweet, but no, it just didn't.
You
do
can
it.
smash
And I
my
agree.
ride, well, maybe
There
not the
wasn't
ride.
Maybe.
For me, it was like not only the lyrics, but his voice, and it just is so smooth and just so pleasing to the ear.
I'm with you, Melissa. It is
And
something
also,
special.
there's so many places where the album is pretty dark. To end on a real uplift note, I thought is a perfect coda for that album. You know, I mean, you explore some dark things, but at the end of the day, it's a hopeful experience.
Not in
And
my
that's
life.
probably
But
why
I
I didn't like it, I guess, right? Because I wanted to be like, that's the end now, right? Go kill yourself.
It's sort of like a "How come you don't call me?"
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But like in If I Was a Girlfriend, where he says, try to imagine what silence looks like. Adore, love is too weak to define, so you have to use the word adore. I mean, that's pretty. That's another one where it's like when I'm writing something, I'm like, I just hope I can write something that good.
Yeah. Or,
All right. On my way to work tomorrow, I'm going to listen to Adore again with fresh ears
oh my gosh.
because I trust you.
I
all.
mean, it's a little.
Next time we
twee.
road trip, we'll put it on repeat until you love it.
Okay.
All right.
Do you have any, Jill? Do you have any notes on that song?
I mean, it's pretty, it's beautiful. I think you have to be in the mood for it. It could come across really twee, but I like the sensitive side. I get what everybody else is saying, that maybe that's not how they wanted that record to end. Maybe it's just the lineup, had it come at a different time, maybe. I don't know, Jeremy.
Talk about album opener than album closer. Like, they're just completely different ends of like musical spectrum. Like,
Yeah, I would have
Emotion-
thought it should have
emotions.
ended on "It's Gonna Be a Beautiful Night," or I don't know, more.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, it's kind of like the
Maybe
encore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
It does
I mean,
feel
it's a
like
pretty
that, yeah.
song. Also, because if you did in those days want to have it on and get really sexy or something, I don't know. Maybe that's the structure. Maybe it's not set up right because there's nothing else after it, right?
I totally agree. You can't do one thing to that album. You have,
can't.
and it's not even about like multiple positions. Like there are points in that album where you're like, I'm not having sex. I can't even speak to you right now, you know? And then it's like suddenly, it's just, there's so much happening in there. I mean, I get that why he chunked it, but even within the chunks, it's like you're all over the place. So.
Yeah, I couldn't be in the middle of sex and jump into Starfish and Coffee. I'd feel really fucking
Right.
weird.
I was thinking the same.
Exactly. Or the cross, you know, where I'm like thinking about poverty. No.
Yeah, that's like you've been having
Starfish and
sex
pee-pee
and then
is coming up in my.
Starfish
Exactly.
and pee-pee, yes.
You're having sex and the guy's like, okay, now we need to pray and repent. Oh, and me like, okay, I need to leave this psycho now.
Right.
Well,
Really,
there's
those
always,
are my go-tos. Maybe that's what I'm doing wrong.
maybe I like cross because there's always been a lot of poverty in my bedroom. So.
Oh no, but not spiritual poverty.
All right, so Sign of the Times. I give it 10 out of 10. I think it's a masterpiece. It's a journey from beginning to the end. I do think we should talk about the Deluxe Edition just a little bit, but does anyone have any thoughts on the album before we move on to a little...
Well,
Jeffrey goes off about the Deluxe Edition?
I would say this even if Jill wasn't here, but that summer of '87, Sign of the Times, Jill's album, and the Wendy and Lisa album were all I played in my car for the whole summer.
I love all three of those albums.
Yeah, that's what that summer was. That's what I think of '87.
Wow.
Oh, I'm all thinking. So, Jeffrey, you have some things to say.
I have some things to say about the box set, but before I say them, I just want everyone to know, because I'm sure Prince fans are, you know, they're very protective. Might think I'm a hater, but I'm really not. I'm just very conscious and conscientious. So a couple things. One, the size of this fucking CD box does not fit on a CD rack. Whereas the 1999 one was a replica. The vinyl was the CD is a replica of the vinyl, whereas this is not. So that really irks me.
Can you hold it up though, Jeffrey?
Oh, sure.
Can you hoist that motherfucker up? Thank you. Wow, that is a box set.
Yes, the booklet wall, very cool. Has a useless essay by Lenny Kravitz, who was not there when this album was recorded. I love Lenny Kravitz, don't get me wrong.
I do not.
Dave Chappelle was a really good friend of Prince's, was not here during the recording of this album, so I don't give a shit what he has to say.
Interesting. That is random as fuck.
Yeah.
There's an article about
Are these cool people? Is that why they're being spoken?
I'm assuming there's an article about how woke Prince was, so I don't want to really look at Prince through the 2020 spectrum, you know? I'm sorry, I mean, Prince was woke, Prince was all those things, but like, not 1987.
Ridiculous.
Dwayne Tudall writes liner notes for the tracks, the vault tracks. Awesome, good job, Dwayne.
That's all I read. I read those.
What there isn't is anything about the actual Sign of the Times album, which is kind of weird. The deluxe tracks are on. There's notes, but not the other stuff. And then my biggest pet peeve of all, for the price that we paid for this thing, the CDs are, I don't know if you can see this, but they're housed in a little sleeve, whereas the vinyl has little individual covers with different pictures, extra liner notes, and then the CD one is like a little bastard that nobody cares about. Yeah. And it's like, I just find that
crazy.
Wow.
So
you weren't woke enough to buy the vinyl on this one.
I'm sorry. I've lived in studio apartments most of my life, so we have to condense space. Yeah. But you know, the Elton John's got a 8 CD box set coming out, which is this has 8 CDs and 1 DVD. The Elton John box set was $80, whereas this Prince one is like $158. So for a DVD, they're trying to charge us like $60. That seems a little high. And then they put it on YouTube for the first couple weeks, which was like, where's that exclusive content that the people that paid the money?
Exactly.
Dave Chappelle's thoughts are expensive.
Not hating, but I just feel very critical about those things.
I don't blame you because his stock is gone. He's like cancel culture right now. He gets his dick out all the time in every photography event.
But since we are honored to have Jill here, I have a couple questions. There's a couple tracks they mentioned that you recorded originally, and then they allude to the fact that they're still in the vault.
Which ones?
I think there's something I like about being your fool.
Oh yeah. Don't bother. I mean, I get it, but we tried some songs and they just.
Not everything's meant to come out of the vault.
I started to have a real issue with singing those words. You know, I was like,
Right.
wait a minute, wait the fucking minute. Yeah, no. I hope they stay in the vault forever.
So that's pretty much my only gripe. I mean, as far as the music, I mean, I can't even believe that after the 2 discs of Sign of the Times, which are like mind-blowing, there's 3 more discs that are mind-blowing.
Are they though? Like, what's the best out of there, Jeffrey? Is there something that that's a couple pieces that are I mean, there's like 90 songs. I am never gonna listen to that.
I mean, being a Psycho in the Head Prince fan for all these years, a lot of them had come out on bootlegs before, so some in great quality, some not so great. But now everything is great. So if you had never heard the song "In All My Dreams," that's amazing. Adonis and Bathsheba, great guitar solo. Witness for the Prosecution, there's like a version with The Revolution and a version with Prince by himself. And then there's like a ton of songs that we'd never heard ever that just for some reason never leaked out. One of the highlights for me was a song called "When the Dawn of the Morning Comes."
That's kind of like church.
Yeah, and then there's "Walking in Glory," which has parts of other songs in it. Two Nigs United for West Compton. That's in there, and once again you're just like, how creative was this guy? I mean, he was even recycling parts of his other songs. So I mean, it's definitely a lot to digest. I mean, for non-Prince fans, I just don't see how they're going to be interested in this. But for people that are, I mean, it's like the holy grail of shit we've been wanting forever. And considering how sucky 2020's been, it's been like the one highlight.
Clark, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to mention something that would piss Jeffrey off, and that's the fact that I have the Apple Music subscription, so I got, I didn't get all the goodies and stuff, but I got all the music basically with my subscription.
Yeah, me too. Me too. That's why I was like, I'm not going to listen to all of those, but yeah, I got it. I got all of them on my phone. I'm going to have to do some serious deleting.
Yep.
There's not much to delete. I memean, it's really like track after track. It's pretty good.
Yeah,
I mean, he was really on fire.
All of it, except for the actual album. Because again, I mean, I understand that deep love, but I don't want to hear multiple versions. I feel like that would make me go fucking crazy.
But the thing is,
I already flop, and he does that too. So.
But the thing is that the versions of the songs, it's not like, oh, this is the version that's just like missing like a hand clap. It's like this version's a rock version and this version's a soul version.
Yeah.
So it's like he really was like feeling it out or whatever,
Right.
Yeah,
that sounds awesome. It sounds like a wonderful package. Who put that out then, and how long has that been?
Warner Brothers.
In the make.
I mean, they put out the 1999 one last year, and that had a bunch of bonus tracks. So I mean.
So it's all Warner Brothers owns all of this. Then it's not something that Prince himself had problems with putting out and didn't want in the vault, that kind of stuff.
I personally think.
I'm curious about that.
I personally think that if Prince was alive, I mean, first of all, none of this would ever have come out, but he would be rolling in his grave over what was put on this, in my opinion, because I'm sure he did not want the world to hear his version of a song called "I Need a Man," which of course was written for a female, but
Bonnie Raitt.
I cannot imagine Prince would want the world to hear that.
Yeah. Well, because he was to me, he was so controlled, and he controlled everything that went out, and so I just was wondering,
but I mean, he sings it with conviction. He sings it with conviction, but it's not like "If I Was Your Girlfriend," where it's like, it's like almost an androgynous song. This is definitely like a song written for a female. But I personally just can't imagine Prince would want people to hear him singing that.
I agree.
But I could be wrong.
Well, the one that I could never listen to ever again is "A Place in Heaven Backwards." That was just awful.
See, I think that's the problem. I think that it worries me that let's see what the next project is. That will be the telltale to see what do you have and what don't you have. Because now we're just pushing songs around and pushing them around and around and around. There may not be as many songs as everybody thought that are in the shape to be heard. That's a big concern, because it's just the way it's being positioned. I mean, I know everybody thinks having famous people, but I think we're headed towards post-celebrity, as the title of your book says, and I totally use that word all the time.
I appreciate it.
I don't think that, it's like read the room. Nobody really gives a shit about somebody writing this because they were famous or not. What I think the estate seems to struggle with is the storytelling of his life, of just even in the marketing. The storytelling is being overlooked, and they need to hire a fucking advertising agency to do it the next time.
Yeah.
Not Warner Brothers people. They need to find or find people who are really wizards at really taking certain things out and learn how to tell a fucking story. That's all.
I think that unless they do something like a Mamma Mia or We Will Rock You type thing, the young people are not going to give a shit. They don't care that Prince does.
No, they don't care, and it's very concerning that it's going to just be, everybody here till their last fucking tooth holding up a Prince record, because they're not welcoming him or introducing him into other aspects of people's lives. That's why the story is so important of what he contributed. But the demands are very different in 2020 going forward from young people. They are expecting very different things. So now it's like, discover what your segmentation wants, your audience, the new ones, and start giving it to them. It's not going to just be like pushing and shoving a whole pile of songs out there. They can only deal with a single at a time. And then that horrible single, wait a minute, what was the single that came out before? Was it for the Bangles or something? It really, Gem, the Gem song. I really, really would have never put that out. That the Gem for the movie they turned down. It's not, what do you think, everybody's 10 years old? It's just finding the moment with him. I don't know. This concerns me is how big this was, and the big money going for the money on this one. I think is great, but they need to know how to tell the story of him. I know you worked on a couple of the other albums, Jeffrey, and putting those packages together. I mean, people can only take about 30 seconds of it.
Well, yeah, and in fact, Prince actually got in his own way when I had this great party mix where it was like a nice flowing thing all the way through, and the person that rejected it was Prince.
Yeah.
And at the end, because I loved the last song on this greatest hits record, at the last line of it was the song "My Name Is Prince," and he just he screams that out at the end of the thing, which was like, after you've listened to 2 hours of Prince, he just reinforces like "My name is Prince," and then it ends,
Right.
And that song's not even on the greatest hits.
So with that said, what do you think, what is the next project?
I think they would be wise to maybe do like a sampler of across the eras, so people could they could figure out what people are talking about, because that tells the story, like Jill was saying, and it's like, if some track from the 90s is the song that goes to, that is talked about online and everybody's orgasming over it, maybe they focus on that era, because he wasn't as commercially viable in the 90s as he was in the 80s.
Sure.
And pretty much really what people want are Purple Rain, Sign of the Times, and now that's in 1999, and those three are out.
Right.
So
I know.
Which
needs a biopic, a well done biopic, frankly, like we've had with some of our other, stars, like somebody mentioned.
I just don't think that young people are that interested in. It's different from our generation. They're different. They don't give a shit. They watch it and it's out. It's gone. It's like there's something else. I wish I knew what to say, but they do watch documentaries. They do, get into that. But I mean, either that, or we were all just really shallow people that are very uninteresting, or he was, or it stops, or there's no where do you pull out who this person is? I mean, a lot of people think that everybody writing books and everything are making a ton of money. It's barely making people money, barely. It's not even something publishers are going, oh yeah, no, I'm telling you. It's just not. So there's a problem with that.
Well, Jill, to your point about you being quote unquote boring people, there's not a lot of scandal, or there's no drug overdoses, there's no spousal abuse, the stuff that traditionally sells rock and roll legends.
There are stories, believe me,
but it's not prevalent.
No, but the problem that we're having is that there are people who are so hell-bent on maintaining their role, that supposed role in the Prince circle, their bubble that they've created and are now functioning on, that it's not even real, that they won't jeopardize telling the truth on things because it jeopardizes where they stand today. That's why there's something so not authentic in any of it.
Right.
Because everybody's I was the best friend. I was the girlfriend. But the reality is, once you get fucking real, just be real. It doesn't take away what you had with him. It's just, if you want to tell the storytelling is being too shellacked.
Right.
I'm going to protect this whole image. Well, all of us are flawed, imperfect human beings. And that's the era that we're in now. We're not in the fucking 1970s or 80s. He wasn't Princess Diana. I mean, even that, people wanted the real meat, that this woman put her fingers down her throat and threw up. And not just that was the thing, it was the pain. And she knew that. So she told them, most truthful person you'd ever deal with was Diana. But the interesting, funny thing is with this, I've learned from being around these famous people and all sorts of stuff, the friends don't want to give up who they want you to think they were to these people.
Right.
You can hold illusion.
If you know what I mean. I'm not, I don't know. That's just what I've been looking at lately. Just tell the fucking truth.
But I also think that people just don't understand. I mean, I remember just being a Prince fan and trying to tell people oh my God, he has all these songs, and people don't understand because they're used to whoever these popular things are with the auto tune and all that. I mean, and then you've got somebody that recorded 17 times over to do the vocals and the drums and the bass and the saxophone, as you were saying. I mean, people can't comprehend what it takes to do all that. So I mean, how are they going to understand when you hand them here's 45 unreleased Prince songs? People are like, what? I mean, there was a statistic that this box set has more songs than Jimi Hendrix released in his entire life.
Exactly, but it's kind of relating that to my kid or my younger people, when you're wow, I've got a steam mop. I remember the days when my grandmother used to be on her hands and knees and she did this. Nobody cares. Right. They're okay, or hanging clothes, loads of laundry, ironing his sheets. So nobody wants to hear the Prince ironed his sheets and then did this with the songs, and there's no appreciation for the labor that goes into anything. People buy fast fashion. They don't care whose hands fell off while they were fucking making it. Sorry. But it makes me stop, if they could, stop releasing it for me. I don't know, figure out the game plan, tell the story, but the story has to be
no one else is shocked that he didn't tell his own story, that he didn't control his own story. I think, to me, that's the ultimate tragedy in Prince, is that
but none of us can tell the whole story. None of us can tell our own story. Do you know that we all lie to ourselves? That we all lie to ourselves?
Clearly. But I mean, I think still though, he left so many loose ends, and so you've got a whole company, right, Warner Brothers, who owns so much, and they're just going to drop it because it doesn't have value to them other than monetary value.
Not true. He was their darling. I know everybody wants to go fuck Warner Brothers, they're horrible. he got priority when other artists didn't around the same time. I guarantee we could find a person out there who was on the label the same time, and who got the money put into their album? Prince. So let's stop all of that, because the reality is, because he had a tantrum about putting that nobody was paying attention to him and his stuff, you know, they weren't paying, they pay for it to get played or whatever. He's no different, but everything he did was a strategy. Let's just be realistic.
That's my point, Jill.
He didn't let any of us walk away with our masters. He didn't give me my masters. He didn't give it to Morris. He didn't give it to Sheila. So how the fuck are you going to write slave on the side of your face and you're bitching about somebody else when you've done the same thing to us?
He took your song.
Part of what he was. That's part of he's very much like the American Morrissey in many ways, right?
He didn't even offer let's go halvesies. No. Nothing. You know,
but that's why his story to me is interesting, because he was a dick in very many ways, right? He was this controlling, really interesting person, and I think his story is really interesting to tell. And just, you know, I don't think we're millennium bashing or anything, but I am going to step in and say, actually, there's quite a few artists out there who do give a fuck.
Like James Brown. James Brown, a lot of the same things, you know, docking people for being late, credit issues, writing royalties, like personal issues, like.
And then people, you're right. And then people would look up to James Brown and think, you know, the younger generation, so Prince would dock people. The same, you know, those patterns and where we're headed now, it's like, that's just, I don't know. So it's just so wrong. Those are, you know, it's the Black women in the music business that I think have the best stories. The best ones. There's so many unsung, there's so many, and I'm not here to slag him off, but if he wouldn't be honest enough about his story, how, you know, he fabricated this whole world and this existence so much to the point where he created the bubble he lived in. It's like, as soon as I thought about that for a long time, he created the gilded cage. You get what you're looking for. You know, he who controls the belief controls the dream. And that's what it was. And it's tragic and it's sad, but it does him no service when people who were watching, you know, Russ Titleman and those guys at Warner's, Lenny Waronker, they did a lot for him, but it was business. There's stockholders that want to be paid and how that works. So for, you know, all these guys who benefited the most from this horrific systemic abuse in the music industry, they're the loudest ones screaming, but they benefited the most from what it was doing for people. They got their songs played because it was pay and play. Simple as that.
This is awesome, by the way. Can I just say that again? I really enjoy this.
Well, I do have one thing off the top of my mind before we wrap it up, and this might not be the right conversation for this, but Jill, you were talking about how Prince had these templates of songs. We talked about how a certain template didn't really last much longer after maybe Anesthesia. And hearing the demos that you started recording for your second album that Prince didn't like were very much in that really intellectual template. Mm-hmm. And that's why I loved the music you did after so much. Because when I heard your 2 album, that's what Prince stopped doing, was that really deep psychological stuff. So thank you for being
because the base of the people that came around him were so fucking basic, some of them. And what was really I'm not just I remember doing Boom Boom, the video. It's okay, I'll finally do it. And he wanted that guy to put the underwear on my face. We fought on set because I really found it degrading. I found it degrading for him to let the male model put a pair of underwear on my face. It really bothered me. It was in a very pivotal moment. And that's why he didn't understand the music or who I was anymore. I did it. It ended up being in the cut. But the fact that he left it in always bothered me, because it was wow, he didn't even listen to what I said. And why does he want to humiliate me so? And that was the time I knew, wow, I'm not my own, I don't get to be my own woman. You know, I was like 26 or 27 around that time. So I was in a very different headspace then, being 18 years old, very different. So I was not cool with it. So then I fucked off with the DP and, you know, slept with him.
All right, well.
Yeah, so.
Take that.
That is what I love.
Oh man.
Yeah. The old wounds of the past.
Well, can we all agree that we will do this again someday?
Yes.
I
I'd love to.
myself.
Does anyone have
Thanks,
any final
Jeremy.
thoughts about Sign of the Times before we sign off? See what I did?
Oh my god.
Nice play on words there.
Love it.
Aw.
This was fun. I want to hear more of Melissa, though, the next time.
I know, Melissa. Any
Melissa,
final-
you have the best room behind you. My
I know.
goodness, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
It's beautiful.
Take like glitter in the paint.
Oh,
Even
wow.
better. Even better.
In the paint.
I know. I love it.
And next
Does
time,
it come off? The paint? Like, you don't.
I just fit in with the paint, so it's. Like
Oh,
glitter.
okay.
Mhm.
I love
let's give
it.
a shout out. Next time, our friend Danielle Vasquez will be joining us. She just couldn't make it.
Oh,
I
okay.
was wondering
Yeah, what's
if
up with that?
Yeah, she had something come up, but she will definitely be with us next time.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
much
What's
love to you
what's the
all.
next album?
Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone? Jill, would you do your album next month?
No. Let's do something more upbeat. Something jazzy or fun.
Someone pick an album.
Hmm.
I really want to talk about the Cure's Disintegration, but I really feel like this probably isn't
I love
panel
The
for
Cure.
me.
All right.
Love The Cure.
You want to talk about Disintegration?
The
Greatest
Cure
Cure
Disintegration.
album ever.
That's our next album.
Okay.
But again, I kill my idols. I really don't give a shit about them as humans. I really only care about the music that they made. And
You don't know much
so
about
I
them
don't
as
have
humans.
a lot.
I listen to their music, but that was about it. I don't know anything about.
Yeah, that's
You
how
don't?
I feel because
Really?
I don't care. I don't care. They're always going to disappoint me, ultimately. And so same with
I
same
just
with
know
everybody.
he hated flying a lot. Robert Smith hated flying.
Oh my god, he's so fucking cute and nerdy. Like you can't have any expectations with him because he's Robert Smith, and so he can't disappoint you.
Well, we all have a month to
Okay.
listen to Disintegration.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Right.
all right.
Much love to you all. This is the highlight of my week.
Mine
Awesome.
too.
Hey everyone,
My
nice to
pleasure.
meet everyone. Bye,
Nice meeting
Jeremy.
you
Love
guys.
you.
Bye. Love you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.